Hello everyone, Niklsun here, and welcome to Coming Soon Movie News with Niklsun. I'm your host, and on this show we're going to be breaking down all of the day's movie news and kind of giving a little bit of background into what it means for the production in general, such as casting decisions, trailer announcements, director announcements, things like that. So, without any further ado, let's get started with today's Hot Topics. And today's first hot topic is about a big announcement that came out yesterday. I was actually surprised that they were releasing this information so early. But Gareth Edwards, the director of Godzilla, has actually been tapped by Lucasfilm and Disney to direct the first upcoming Star Wars spin-off film. It will be released in December 16, 2016, but we still don't know what movie it's going to be. If we're going to base it off of the leaked time frame or timeline of films that are going to be coming out that Hasbro leaked, if that is indeed true, then it looks as though he will be directing Boba Fett. This kind of goes against what some reports have come out in the past because, what's his name? The Larry Kasdan, Lawrence Kasdan, the guy who wrote Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, was brought in to write one of the spin-off movies. Him and Simon Kinberg were in charge of writing the spin-off films. Now, there's another man, Jeff Whitka, is the one who is actually going to be writing this film, or has a script already written for this film. Again, we don't know which one it is. But Lawrence Kasdan was supposedly writing the Boba Fett movie. That was a report that came out back in January. So we don't know exactly which one this is going to be, but in Gareth Edwards' statement about accepting the gig, he actually stated, he said, it has always been his dream to be a part of the Rebel Alliance. Now, that could just be his Star Wars fanboy talking about just being involved in the Star Wars universe in general. But it could potentially hint at the fact that he's actually going to be doing the Red 5 movie. Or maybe even one that hasn't even been announced yet. Again, this is all kind of speculation. I'm just kind of going off the seat of my pants here. But Red 5 would make a little bit more sense, especially for someone like him, and especially for them to separate the standalone movie from the overall expanding saga if they focused on the squadron, the fighter squadron, or at least the Rebel Alliance in general. But if that's the case, if he does want to join up with that, we don't even know if the Rebel Alliance is still around, because after the events of Return of the Jedi, the Empire was defeated, or at least so we thought. So, because again, this is going based on movie canon. This isn't overall canon. This is G canon, not Legends. So they're not, as far as we know, they're not taking anything from Star Wars Legends, which, for those of you who don't know what Star Wars Legends is, it's anything that has been talked about or done with Star Wars outside of the 6 theatrical films and the Clone Wars television series. So for them to take anything outside of that, they have the license to do that if they want to, but they don't have to adhere to that information. So again, we don't know which one it is, but they're going to announce that probably before the end of this year. We'll hear which movie it's actually going to be. But the head of Legendary, Thomas Tull, who is responsible for Godzilla, he oversaw the entire production of Godzilla. He actually gave a statement about how he was very happy with Gareth Edwards actually getting this gig, which is unusual. You usually don't see a competing company giving their best regards to someone who has gone over to do something for someone else. But he came out and said that it was always the plan for Gareth to go off and shoot another movie in between Godzilla 1 and 2. But he had no idea that it would be a Star Wars film. But he did come out and confirm that Gareth Edwards currently is still attached to direct both Godzilla 2 and Godzilla 3. And with the new Star Wars movie coming out at the end of 2016, and him and Edwards starting to work on Godzilla 2 after that movie, if the timeline stays the way that it is, we're most likely not going to be getting Godzilla 2 until at least 2018, which is it's 4 years away, which if you think about it, that's not like the time we waited for the Star Trek sequel. So coming out with Godzilla 2 in 2018, it gives them a lot of time to really flesh out the script, improve on the qualities that they didn't handle as well as they could have in the first movie, and really come up with a really intriguing and great story. But more importantly, it gives them more time to get the rights to some of the characters from Toho, because they were only able to get the character of Godzilla. That's why they had to create the Mutos in this movie, because they did not have the licensing to use the names of Rodan or Ghidorah or any Mothra, or any of the creatures that people would be remembering from any of the Godzilla movies. So But the good news about this is that he is still confirmed to be a part of Godzilla 2 and 3, as well as the new Star Wars movie. Which this guy's career is just blossoming. I cannot be more happy for the guy. He's a very talented director. Really excited to see what he brings to the Star Wars front. And the second topic we have to talk about today is a report about Fast and Furious 7. And it's about its budget. Now, I had no idea the original budget was going to be this high, but apparently the budget was originally thought to be somewhere in the range of $200 million, which is massive. But because of the unfortunate events that happened back in November, where we unfortunately lost the actor Paul Walker, they were only about halfway through filming, so they had to pause filming for several months. And now they're having to do reshoots. They're having to do like certain things with. They're using 3 simultaneous cameras as well as a main unit camera to shoot all the scenes involving Paul Walker's brothers, so that they can capture the body movements and facial mannerisms, so that they can manipulate them using CGI later on to give it more of a Paul Walker look, even though his brothers look ridiculously close to how he is. But the biggest thing too is apparently they are finishing the movie more or less as scripted. Which is a fear that I had earlier, that they were actually going to try to push this as far as they could and continue on with whatever they had written in for Paul Walker's character, and then just rewriting what happens to him at the end. Maybe he just, he leaves with his wife and kid. But if they're saying it's more or less as scripted, we're going to be getting a lot of Paul Walker with facial replacement, and that has me a little bit iffy because of how it was handled. Now, again, this is going back a few years, but how it was handled in Tron Legacy. Tron Legacy, for those of you who didn't see it, with Jeff Bridges' facial replacement to be his younger self, it was distracting. It looked fake. The one thing that gives me hope, though, is Weta is actually working on the special effects. For those of you who don't know what Weta is Peter Jackson's production company that handles all the CGI on the Lord of the Rings movies, and particularly Gollum, but they also helped out with Avatar. So these are the guys who are responsible for creating the most photorealistic CGI creations in the world. So they have it in the right hands, but as it stands right now, I'm still not that sold on them using him to this extent. I was hoping that it would just be a few scenes to finish up his character arc and then get him out the door, because it's going to get distracting. Again, we need to see what the final result's actually going to look like once they release some photos of an actual fully CG rendered Paul Walker from a sequence that he did not originally shoot, which again, it's kind of sad to think about how they're doing this, but it is the best of a bad situation. So I mean, we really don't have a lot to go with in terms of that, but the fact that the budget, because of all this, is now ballooning to $250 million and above, that's getting a little worrisome. And I mean, the studio's going to make this money back, but they're going to put a big marketing campaign ahead of this thing, which means we're going to be getting, I'm going to say, at least anywhere between $60 to $100 million for their marketing campaign. They're going to do a big push for this film. So that means that the budget has already now gone to 300, almost 350, with the studio back end, the theater chains take, and all that stuff. This movie's going to have to pass almost $600 million or $550 million just to break even. Now, they're going to make it back. I mean, I think Universal has no question about that. But it's still, I mean, we've seen this happen before with John Carter. We've seen it happen with The Lone Ranger. Now, the difference with those movies is they were boring and they didn't, well, John Carter was very good. I really enjoyed John Carter. But Lone Ranger was terrible. It was boring. It was overinflated. It had no reason for it to be that expensive. So, I mean, as it stands right now, I'm still really looking forward to this movie. I hope that they get this under control. They don't allow the budget to balloon too much, and we get a very good quality movie in the end result. All right, now this brings us on to our user questions. So the user question we have today is actually about the upcoming G.I. Joe movie and what's the status on a new G.I. Joe movie. Well, to let you know, the film is in active development. Director John Chu, who directed G.I. Joe Retaliation, is coming back to direct the third movie. At least as it stands right now, he is still connected to it. But he is currently shooting a new film called Gem and the Holograms. This kind of came out of nowhere. It went from being announced to 3 weeks later actually shooting. So we don't know exactly what the status is of G.I. Joe 3 in terms of its production state and where it's going to start production, what the story elements are going to be. There has been, like, John Chu a couple of months ago in an interview did state that I mean, they're not discounting the fact that spoiler alert, by the way, anyone who hasn't seen the other G.I. Joe movies, this is going to be a spoiler. So if you want, you can just skip ahead. But there's talk about them potentially bringing back Duke. Now they said that no, like they brought back Storm Shadow. Storm Shadow died in the first one, and then he came back in the second one. So they theoretically could bring him back. Now, for those of you who were actually paying attention to that quote, yes, Storm Shadow did come back in G.I. Joe 2. They did not explain one iota how he was still alive. They didn't even explain that he died. They didn't even mention that he died. So, I mean, if they do that with Duke, they can't just have him come back because, you know, The Rock actually saw him die. You know, all those characters who lived through G.I. Joe 2 saw him get blown up. And with them bringing him back, if they're not going to explain it, then it's just going to be pointless. It's only bringing him back to just get Channing Tatum back. Now, I would love for them to bring Channing Tatum back because I'm really starting to get to like this guy as an actor because he's, you know, you got 21 Jump Street, upcoming 22 Jump Street. He's got Foxcatcher coming out later this year, which looks incredible. And he's also got Jupiter Ascending, which I'm really excited about because it's hard sci-fi from the Wachowski brothers. So he's got all these really intriguing projects coming out that's really going to diversify him. But on top of that, he's Gambit. He's signed on as Gambit for the next X-Men film. So this guy's career is really burgeoning. And we won't likely see the movie until at least 2017. If they were to even bring Channing Tatum back, which I don't think they will, I think they're going to continue on with having The Rock and Bruce Willis be the main characters in the new movie. But he also did say that it will feature returning characters such as The Rock and Bruce Willis, but it will also feature new, exciting characters. So he didn't elaborate on that at all, so we don't know exactly which characters he's going to be bringing in. But I'm excited for G.I. Joe 3. I thought Retaliation was a step up on Rise of Cobra, even though I did enjoy Rise of Cobra. They both were different films, and I have a feeling this one's going to follow more along the lines of Retaliation than it did for the Rise of Cobra. So, well, that'll about do it for Coming Soon Movie News with Niklsun. Thank you so much, you guys, for watching. You've been a great audience. Don't forget to click subscribe there in the bottom corner. You can get updates whenever I post a video. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Niklsun, Niklsun, to get updates on all your movie-related information. You can go ahead and visit our website down here at movienewswithniklsun.ca. And in the website, there's a contact section where you can actually submit your user questions for every Friday episode, where I will answer them. So that's any topic, question, or anything involving any film project at all that you would like to have discussed or have a question about, anything like that. Go to the website and you can go to the contact section, send me an email, and I will get back to you guys on the Friday episode about whether or not we have any new information about any of those projects. So again, this has been Niklsun. You guys have been great. Thank you so much, and you enjoy your day. Take care.